Now I am.
Now you are? Okay. So this is class 12 or 21, depends on which way you're looking at it. The way I'm looking at it's 12, so it should be. And today we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about one, the powers of Congress. Okay. We're in Article 1 still, according to the syllabus, and we're still dealing with Congress. But at the same time, as we approach the midterm and all that, and as we approach the election, I think it would be in our best interest if we discussed political platforms. Because when we elect our governmental officials, we want to know why we're doing so. And it is unfortunate how poorly people make choices politically on both sides of the aisle. And I am not judging the poorness of their decision based on the conclusions they make, like I'm voting for this guy or for this person, okay? It's not the conclusions, but the reasoning process by which these people make their decisions, that, you know, they allow political commercials to help them think, or their peers, their friends and their families and their race and their gender and their geographical location. Geographical location may actually be one of the most reasonable out of all those that I just stated. And I'll mention why. So today I want to deal with two things, and they're both not short. Okay, so one is the powers of Congress, and then I'm going to give you kind of an assignment-ish. No, it'll be an assignment. It's definitely an assignment on the political platforms. Okay, and this is for your own personal edification, and you'll get some credit out of it, obviously, because it is an assignment. The real question is for you is to ask yourself, based on these issues, one, do I know what the issues are? Two, do I know how to reason through the issues properly? And three, after I've reasoned through the issues on a ledger, where do I stand? And then who, or plural whom, which group supports those views of mine that I, or you in this case, have reasonably decided, where you stand on the issues. Not that you went, well, I'm with you guys. And one statement, I knew a person that asked me, looked at me and she goes, where do we stand on this? And I said, I don't know, we'll call her Sarah. No, let's not call her Sarah. Let's call her, give me a fake name.
Julie?
No, that's her real name. Just kidding. Julie, I don't know, Julie. Where do you stand on it? Because I was like, don't let me think for you. Because trust me, there are so many people out there that want to think for you, especially when it comes to voting. All right? And that's the deal. So I want you to be able to go through this and make your own mind up, even if it's wrong. I mean, at least take ownership of the reasoning. And when I say wrong, we all make good and bad choices. I know a guy who voted for a particular president years ago, and then he said, oh my gosh, I so regretted that later. And that's fair. That's perfectly fair. But when he did it, I can't say that he didn't know the issues. I can't say that, and I look at him, I go, yeah, what were you thinking? But, I mean, come on. When I was younger, right? I mean, I probably would have voted a certain way, and now I'd be like, oh my God, I'm just so glad I didn't vote back then. So glad I wasn't that great of a citizen, which is all perfectly perfectly well. If you're not educated, why should you vote? I'm not suggesting we keep people from voting who aren't educated. I'm just suggesting that it is.
It's better to be
That's-
more educated before you vote. And that was like there was a debate between I don't know her name. She's a political figure and a celebrity, Cardi B, and
Cardi B.
yeah, she
Yeah,
had
I know.
yeah. There's like this thing, and it was just she made very good points.
What point did she make?
You're not educated enough to talk on these topics that are
She
bigger.
said that.
No, the political.
Pundit.
She
Yeah.
said you're not
It was
educated.
a woman who said this.
Yes.
Was that woman black?
Yes.
Her name's Candace Owens.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Candace said you're not educated enough to talk and pick a side on these topics when you don't like it's something bigger than you. And you like she was just saying practically you don't have an educated background to give your opinion to the public and try to put your opinion on them because you know that you have these people in your like rear view.
Keep going, keep going.
She's like, you know, you have these people in your rear view and you're trying to influence them, but you don't know enough about the subject to make a decision and to choose a side.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I didn't even want to vote anymore because I honestly, I don't know what's going on in this
good.
side,
Well,
what's
let's
going
talk
on in
about
this
it. Let me
side.
tell you how to vote, and I'm joking, okay? What my goal here is, and you'll remember I'm biased. You've got to remember this. So, but what you got to do is you got to say, well, what are the issues and why, where do I stand on the issues, right? And this, and Candace Owens is very smart. She is educated, but I mean, and her specialty is this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cardi B is a performer, and her specialty is dancing and poetry, which is fine. I love music. I play music. I wish I was as talented as a musician as she. Okay, but yeah, does she have a degree in political science? You don't need one to be a voter, and you don't even need one to be correct in the political issues. But to be able to articulate the reasoning behind your votes and why you think you're correct, Candace Owens is saying you really lack the skills here. And when I've heard Cardi B speak, I don't get the impression she has a full command of the English language even. So even though she can sing very well and she can dance probably really well, I've never seen her or listened to her music, okay? I'm into rock, it's not my thing, R&B. But I will not take away from her talent, because I can guarantee she's got some talent, okay? You don't become famous without that. But she's got a microphone, okay? And that's the problem. She's got a microphone. I think last week I was making use of another one, star who was knocking on doors for Hillary Clinton. And so a girl who kissed a girl.
Katy Perry?
What's her name?
Katy Perry?
Yeah, Katy Perry. How he used to joke, yeah, I kissed a girl and I liked it too. I'm a dude. So yeah, you don't want to make decisions. That's called the genetic fallacy, by the way. Okay? It's kind of like the I'm with him because it's popular, or so because so and so said it must be right. If Cardi B says it, I wouldn't say it's wrong because she said it. I'd just say she more than likely didn't come up with that conclusion based off of sound reasoning. Okay, I trust Candace Owens' reasoning more than hers. But don't get me wrong, there are people that I could agree with their conclusion, but say you did it the wrong way. Okay, you just didn't do your own homework, and that's our goal, is to be able to do our own homework so that we can come up with these ideas. Let's talk a little bit about the Article 1, and we're going to go to Section 8. It's on page 31 of your Constitution. I'm just going to read it really quickly, and then we're going to we're going to discuss just a little bit about the powers, and I think that says enough. So I shall read, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes. Big deal, right? especially considering they had a revolution from England concerning taxes. Then they had found out governments do have to collect taxes and they need the power to do so. Anyway, so that's why they got rid of the Articles of Confederation. So Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay. Why? To pay and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. Let me suggest something here. When I gave you guys the assignment, the who, what, where, why, when assignment on these articles, there is so much there, what I just said there. The who would obviously be the legislative branch, Congress. What has the power to do what? To collect taxes, duties, imposts, and exercises. Why? To pay debts and provide for the common defense, and general welfare of the United States. You got who, what, why, you even got a where. The United States, not somewhere else. Okay? So, as I went through the assignments, I noticed some of them were quite bare. So, that's not to suggest that our audience here is those people, but those listening. Okay, so keep in mind when I want you to do those assignments, there's a lot of who, what, where, why, when, and how on every. You just got to ask, what is a statement making? Is it a who statement, a what, a where, a why, a when, a how, etc. Okay, and when you do that, you'll find out how much you could pull out of the Constitution. Do this with the Bible, by the way, and you'll be amazed at how your biblical reading and understanding will just come alive. Okay. Anyways, also to borrow money, not just to collect taxes, but to borrow money to regulate commerce with foreign nation and among several states with the Indian tribes, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. That means how we become citizens, and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States, how we free ourselves from debt we cannot pay, to coin money and regulate the value thereof, and foreign coin, and to fix the standard of weights and measures. In the 70s, they were trying to get us to this. They were trying to get us on the metric system. I'm going to go through all this just a bit. To provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. That is the way that people would counterfeit not just the money, but the securities. That is our debt documents and the like. To establish a post office and post roads. Now there's been discussion about getting rid of the post office. Why would we want to do that? Well, because there's places like UPS, once email came and letters kind of went down, and UPS and FedEx, and there's a whole slew of them now come out, delivering all these things, and it turned out that the private sector is better at it than the public sector is, right? That the government isn't as good and efficient at moving parcel as private companies are. The government tends to lose money doing this, right? It costs them more. Why can't we get rid of it? Because it's in the Constitution. And if it's in the Constitution, to get rid of it, you must do what? Amend the Constitution. And if you amend the Constitution, that is a big, long process. Requires quite a bit. We'll talk about that once we get to that. Okay? All right, to promote the progress of science and useful arts. You have the National Academy of the Arts, you have the National Academy of the Sciences. Why is this? There you go, you have a why. And how here? By securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. And this is how we have patent laws and stuff like that, where you actually have a right to your own inventions, that I can't invent some something and then somebody else say, that's a good idea, I'm gonna go copy it. We have what's called copyright, okay? To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations, to declare war, grant letters of marque. What's a letter of marque? A letter of marque would be that they would give permission to a private vessel to go to a foreign land to retrieve another foreign vessel, enemy vessel that is, to actually allow them to conduct some kind of naval, I would say warfare, but they would be there to bring them back as though they were fugitives in a sense, okay? That Congress can give letters of that and reprisal, and to make rules concerning the captures on land and water, okay? You know, there are rules to war, and it's, you know, the Geneva Convention talked about, you know, the rules of engagement and all that, and how how war should be conducted. Now, there's an old saying, there's no, you know, all's fair in love and war, right? Tendency is, people we fight tend to not fight with a whole lot of rules, which is, you know, that's where you get what's called guerrilla warfare. The raise the support of armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for longer than 2 years. That's interesting. So keep in mind, you go to war, how long do you have to conduct war before you have to start getting money again? 2 years. To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and regulation of land and naval forces, to provide for the calling forth the militia, to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections and repel invasions. Very important when we talk about insurrections, okay? Because some believe that what's going on in America right now in Portland, Chicago, New York, and Seattle, those are insurrections, that Antifa is going around breaking into stores, rioting and looting and all this stuff, and arsoning, you know, committing arson, and this president saying, mayors, get this under control, and the police are not being able to do so. And so he suggested bringing in the National Guard, that is military forces. And then of course people are going, don't do that, you use the military on your own people, right? Well, is it not an insurrection, right? Well, anyway, whose job is that? Well, according to this, it's Congress's job to provide for the calling forth of militia, to execute the laws of the Union, to suppress suppress insurrections and repel invasions. To provide, then further it goes on to say, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining disciplining the militia, and that's where we get the UCMJ, and that's the laws and rules of the military. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, that is. And for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively an appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the disciplining prescribed by Congress. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 square miles, as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper. I would underline that test question. For carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. Mentioned a district not exceeding 10 miles square. What is that? Where government the government will be set up. It's a district. It's a district of,
Columbia,
otherwise known as
DC.
DC. Is that a state?
Yes. No.
It is not a state.
Don't they have their own rules? No laws? No.
They have a mayor. The license plate, the Washington DC license plate reads, what was it? Taxation without representation.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's funny.
If you recall, our in the Declaration of Independence, there's this, loud cry for, representation, right? And DC has no representative. They're not a state. They don't even have a governor. So there's a push now by the Democrats to make DC a state. Now it'd be interesting to me, I wonder if somebody can make the claim that then you'd have to alter the, you'd have to amend the Constitution to do that, given that it is established in the Constitution. This area, which is now, at this point, DC, okay? Would you have to do that? Or could you just say, forget it, we're making it a state, they get a governor, they get a bunch of state representatives, they get state representatives based off of their population, and then they get two. Why would you want DC to become a new state, its own state? Why would anybody, what would motivate you to want that?
Votes?
Yeah, votes. Well, they already get a vote, like they get a vote in the general election, right? Okay. But what about senators? See, DC is overwhelmingly a blue area. What do I mean by blue?
Democratic.
Democrat. It's overwhelmingly Democrat. So you can imagine it's the Republicans who really want them to have 2 senators, right? It's the Democrats. Because if you get 2 senators, they're gonna be what? Democrats, because they're not gonna elect Republicans. So now you tip the power balance in the Senate, which is already very close, okay? They also want Puerto Rico to be a state. Do they really want Puerto Rico to be a state, or do they just want, and I know this is sounding really biased, do they, because I'm clearly a Republican, right? Do they want, are they really concerned with Puerto Ricans being their own state, or do they just want even two more Senate seats? See, part of this is a threat right now over the justice, nomination we were talking about last week. They want to add more seats to the Supreme Court, called court packing. We'll talk about that later, so that they could have more justices that view have their worldview on their side, so that they can always have their decisions. They want to get rid of the Electoral College, so that states that in the middle of can't really mess up the popular vote, right? And then they want to get rid of so you have the major metropolis areas making the decisions for the country rather than the middle of the nation. Then they want what else is there? Get rid of the pack Supreme Court, get rid of the Electoral College, add a bunch of senators. That tells you something, that there's a desire for power, and that if you're not getting it the way it is currently set up, okay, that means you want to change the rules of the game so that you can now win. Okay, now that sounds pretty biased, but I think that's a pretty good assessment. We're afraid Roe versus Wade may be overturned by a 5-4 decision, therefore we put 3 more of our own judges on there, and pack court, make sure that doesn't happen. It's about power, okay? It's not about process. Well, anyway, let's talk quite a bit about all those powers in there. The necessary, there's necessary and proper clause at the end of all that says it gives you all these powers that it has, and then it adds to it. They also have the power to create laws that are necessary and proper to making sure you get all this done. So I made just a little list here of the powers, such as to pay debts. Well, we should make some laws that if you don't pay your taxes, right, that, so they could collect taxes, right? But we should be able to make laws that say if you don't pay your taxes, we'll put you in jail. Because if we don't do that, then nobody is going to pay their taxes. It is necessary to have some kind of punishment for those who aren't going to help us out. So collecting taxes is all easy, well, and good if you're just going here, passing the hat around, everybody did it voluntarily, but people don't give away their money voluntarily. Who wants to pay taxes?
No.
Nobody. Who wants other people to pay taxes, though? That's the trick. And Congress seems to always want to come up with a way to get people to pay more money. And that is a criticism of both sides of the aisle, be it Democrat or Republican. And at least the Democrats will say, yeah, we want to raise your taxes. The Republicans will be like, we're not going to raise your taxes, and then they go do it anyway. And one need only look at the debt clock when we talk about borrowing money, if they have the right to borrow money. You go look at the debt clock, I suggest you do so, type in debt clock, I think it's like debtclock.gov or .com, and see how much debt America has. It will scare you. It will freak you out.
Is it like in the trillions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
20, I think. 20 to 22. Did you pop it up? Feel free to pull it up. Scary, and you can see it going up, right? As it speaks, the money just rolling up, very scary. So what happens when you produce less, your GDP, gross domestic product, less than you are borrowing in your household? If you make less money than you are borrowing,
It's gonna crash.
then you are in big trouble, okay? Then something goes, and you don't want that to happen in a country, and we're afraid of how close we're coming to that. Anyway, so the government does make debts, right? They borrow money, so that's what I mean by making it. And you ask the question, these are some of the things that when it comes to the voting, when we bring that up, you're gonna ask the question, am I voting for people who are saying I'm gonna go spend more money? Because nobody votes themselves out of a job, do they? And once you create something, let's say a government bureaucracy, they don't go away, okay? All right. So that's one of the major powers of Congress, is that they could really crush us. They're there to collect taxes, to pay for the things that they say they're gonna buy. They both have the power to buy things and to get your money to pay for them. I don't like that. They also have the power to wage war. That is one of the reasons they take in money. They have established the rules of naturalization. Let's talk about the rules of naturalization. Okay? Should everybody be a citizen if they want to be a citizen? You say no. What do you say? Maybe. Shouldn't everybody be? Should we allow felons in? What if Hitler said, I'm done with Germany, I give up, I just want to go to America. Would you let him in? No, okay. He's Hitler. That's an easy one. Some of I don't know if you know this, that a lot of people are really angry, who are angry at the illegal problem with immigration in America, are the Hispanic community. Is the Hispanic community, people in there. Why are they upset?
Because Mexico is
What?
Because they are taking like people's jobs or the ones that live there due to immigration. They believe that the ones that are irrigating are like taking up too much space.
They're taking up too much space or jobs?
Well, the main is jobs or like employment.
So you're saying the Hispanic community is mad at these immigrants coming in because they're taking their jobs?
Well, Hispanic community?
Yeah, that's what I said, the Hispanic community. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot, look, there were jobs traditionally held by, people who did not have high school educations, or they had high school educations, but not college educations. And so, when I got out of high school, first of all, when I was in high school, it was very hard, during the summer, you always wanted to go see if you could work on a construction site as a laborer, right? And then hopefully you somewhere got either into the carpentry union, which I did, or construction industry, and you become a journeyman, right? So there's apprentice, then journeyman, and then maybe a contractor of some sort, you know, where you're the boss. And you're like this, you get a trade. Well, it was hard to get those jobs, even when I was young, okay? And then, as the people come in, keep in mind, people want to buy cheaper things, and labor is a very expensive thing. And if you could hire somebody under the table for half the amount of money that you'd be paying the other guy,
You're gonna do it.
they're gonna do it, and they do it. It's that competitive. And so these contractors were hiring, and still do, illegal immigrants who are willing to work for cash under the table, and they're not paying income taxes, or they're not paying into Social Security, stuff like that. Now they're paying tax. When people say, "Oh, they don't pay taxes," well, sure. Every time you go to the gas pump, you pay taxes. You pay consumption taxes. That is, you pay your, you go pay taxes when you go to the grocery store, and they tap on that 8% or whatever. Okay, but income taxes and other things like that are not. Okay, well, so people like me now are pushed out of a job. No, I don't. I have to compete, and I can't compete with that, especially since I'm expecting a regular wage. So now I'm pushed out of that, and I have to go into another industry. Now I say that, well, I was in it, but I wanted to go to school. So I went in the military, got out of the military, went to school. But yeah, there are whole communities that that's no longer an option. Young American men, it's very difficult to become a construction worker, at least in the southern states of America. Okay, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, California, and it's just because there's just this flood of cheap labor that upsets people. But I asked the question about and by the way, this impacted the black community greatly, okay? Because the black community, by and large, was moving into that field, which now it's very difficult again. And so there are ethnic communities that are upset about this. This is not, a lot of people argue, oh, well, it's just white people who don't like this. No, a lot of black people who've been displaced, and Hispanics who've been displaced, who are legal citizens, have been displaced. But one of the biggest concerns was the fact that a lot of these people I was talking about the Hispanic community, that they actually went through the process, they they kind of did their time, and then all these other guys come in and they don't, and they're like, well, wait a minute, there's a bit of resentment that builds for those who went through the process versus those who didn't. And by the way, I don't want us to associate illegal immigration with Hispanic, okay? Because there are plenty of illegal immigrants that are of Asian descent, of white descent, that would be European, Anglo, coming from Canada or coming from Europe, okay? Come from other places. There are people coming from Africa, okay? So it's a multi-ethnic issue. It is not merely, and by the way, it also presupposes that anybody south of the border of America is somehow the same ethnicity when they are not, okay? There's lots of differences between those people from Argentina and from Mexico and from
Cuba.
Puerto Rico. I mean, it was not Puerto Rico, but
Cuba.
Chile?
Cuba.
Cuba. Well, Cuba is not south of our border. It's actually in the ocean. It's an island. But yes, So now, is there Hispanic descent? Yes. The people from Spain you know, basically moved in and married, I guess, some of the indigenous population. And so, you know, that worked out that way. All right. Well, let's move on. Not to stick to naturalization, but the question I would have with naturalization is who makes the rules? That's the question.
The legislative branch.
That's the obvious answer. So if we have a problem with naturalization and all of this, who's to blame?
Congress.
Congress. Yet, who seems to be taking all of the heat?
Executive.
The executive branch. You see the president getting heat for putting children in cages. Have you seen that one? Has the president put children in cages? Well, the president
He.
executes the law.
Mhm.
Are these cages, are they these little carriers, you know, put a little kid in there, you know, kind of like get the cat in. You know how you get a cat in a carrier? Backwards. You try to do it forward, they're all like, you know, you're not gonna do it. What you do is you kind of like trick them. You put it behind them and you kind of put your hand on their face, they back away from your hand, next thing you know they're in a box, like, what the heck? Slam. We're not doing this to children, okay? There are these facilities, and yes, there's some chain link fences. When were these made? Allegedly in 2014. And you see all these pictures floating around. Look what Donald Trump's doing. When was Donald Trump elected president?
2016.
2016 was the election year, right? Took off 17. So who built the cages?
Obama.
That administration, yes, we'll just say the previous administration. But yet, you know, for political reasons, they use these things. But in reality, who made the laws? The legislative branch. So once people break the laws, what does the executive branch do? They execute the laws. Somebody's coming across, we gotta catch them, and they detain them, okay? It's not their fault, the laws are made that way. They're just made, they execute. Now, I'm not saying we should open the borders. I don't think we should. I think borders are good. All right, the coin money. This is a big issue. Does anybody know what Bitcoin is yet?
Yes, it's like a not financial. It is a financial currency, but it's a virtual currency.
A virtual currency. Did Congress create this?
No.
No. It's interesting. It's not necessarily, it's a tradable item. I'm unaware of what it is, so I'm gonna admit my ignorance right here. I hear a lot about it and I wanna stay away from it because of my ignorance. I wanna learn about it though. But is it real money? I don't think we could call it real money. At least legal tender. That's what on our dollars, what's it say? Legal tender for what?
Debt.
All debts, public and
Private.
All right, they can also fix the standards of weights and measures. We talked about them. They tried to move us to the metric system in the 70s. Americans gave them the middle finger, and it never stuck. Okay? We like pounds, and we like miles. We don't like kilometers. We like inches and feet. Okay? We like yards. We like our football fields to be 100 yards, not 100.5 meters or whatever that would turn out to be. I run marathons, 26.2 miles, right? Which turns out to, if I'm correct, turns out to be, I think, 44 meters or something like that. I could be wrong. Anyway, it's not meters. God, that
Kilometers would be higher.
Kilometer. It could be the world's shortest marathon. But I'm still confused over it. That's All right, provide for punishment for counterfeiting. Very big deal. Post office, we talked about that. Mentioned science and useful arts. Declaring war. When was the last war we declared?
Was it Vietnam? No. Afghanistan? No. Was that really a war?
Well, that raises the question, what does it mean to be a war? Do you have to declare war to be a war? Does it have to be declared? But go ahead. What'd you say?
The Cold War.
The Cold War. No, that was an undeclared war. That was, it would have been the second Iraq War. You had the first Iraq War when Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. George Bush Sr. gave him an ultimatum. We put up what was called Desert Shield, and the military had, you know, gone in and basically said, on this date, if you're not out, we're coming in and taking you out. And then the date came, and he didn't get out, and so America went in and took him out. Didn't replace him. They just got him out of Kuwait, okay? Kuwait was very thankful. Literally wanted to give the military men a monetary reward for doing it, and of course, no, and then our government said, no, we're not mercenaries. We did not do this for money. And of course, as Marine, we're like, you know, anyway, but then after 9/11, okay, which is, you know, 20 years ago now, well, 19 years ago, then George Bush Jr. had asked Congress to declare war on Iraq because they believed that they had weapons of mass destruction. And Saddam Hussein would not allow us in to really do a thorough investigation, and everybody, and I remember they brought Colin Powell and all these people from the different intelligence agencies, and they were arguing to the UN and to Congress that, look, we can see this. I remember watching Colin Powell showing satellite imagery. This is a Scud missile, and this is it's going to deliver this kind of gas and blah blah blah, right? We got in, we didn't find anything. We actually, they I think only one, and I can't even remember his name. It might have been a female too, that voted against the war. Okay, and went in, declared war, and took out Saddam Hussein. They actually hunted him down. They had a deck of 52 cards, and on each card there was a face of a particular general. One of them was Saddam Hussein. The Joker was the head of the UN, and because he was the guy who was like at the UN saying, "You guys are idiots, you know, you're jerks, you're all this stuff," and so he was made fun of, and they made him the Joker. So when the military went in, they all had a deck of cards so that they could identify, they knew who they were looking for anyway. So they go through and they find all these guys, and they're gonna put them up on you know, military tribunals for war crimes, okay? Interestingly enough, during this time, we're also fighting in Afghanistan. And they had taken out the Taliban, and it's all retribution for 9/11, right? And there was George Bush was up being asked questions one night, and he's at the podium, and somebody asked him, how many people have died so far? He says, we've killed about 300,000 people. So 300,000, but this is after we had taken over Iraq. Okay, so imagine we've taken over Iraq, held a free election there for them to elect their own government, but now all these insurgents are coming and these people who are attacking from outside. So the military is still killing people, but they're not the Iraqi military. They were insurgents. They were terrorists, basically. A lot of them were basically setting up IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and that's how most of our men got hurt or killed, was they'd be driving along in a convoy, and all of a sudden they'd dial in on a cell phone, dial a number after they'd buried an improvised explosive device, and it blows the car up or the truck up or whatever they're driving, and they lose their legs, and that's why you see so many amputees. A lot of these guys weren't seeing major combat like in Fallujah or anything like that, or where they had to go door to door kicking in, you know, doors there to get where they said get out. If you're a fighting age, you better get out if you're not a combatant, because we're going to treat you as such. And so they go in door to door finding guys my age and younger, between 18 and 40. Well, not 40, come on, who are we kidding? 18 and 50. And fighting age, and they're going to treat them as combatants. Okay, it wasn't like that. Most of our physical, you know, casualties came from IEDs. Well, anyway, so that war was actually declared. Okay, so now there was a lot of fighting over that war because, Kerry wanted to run for office, and so Bush's second term, he's running against John Kerry, and John Kerry, his family owns Kraft Heinz, just to let you know. So if you eat ketchup, you've probably eaten his family's products.
Oh, yeah.
And so he wants to be president. He's kind of I don't want to say he's an anti-military guy, but he's got a bad rap with the military, okay? He was in Vietnam and came back and badmouthed the military, and his own Swift boat group that he led was not very happy with him. But nonetheless, this idea of Congress started playing games with war. And so the Democratic held Congress was saying we're going to withhold money so you cannot conduct war anymore. So you see how Congress can now hold a check on the presidential's power to do what?
War.
Yeah, so he's supposed, they declare war, he asks them to declare war, they do declare war, and then later on they're like, that was kind of a mistake, and if you can't, and can America win a war? That's been one of the questions that's gone on since Vietnam. That is, a divided country just doesn't seem to be able to win a war, and America's not been able to win a war. We kicked Saddam out pretty easily of Kuwait, in 96 hours. But a real war, one where the enemy continues to fight, and America's divided, and because America's divided, we get, our representatives become divided, and once they're divided, then debate over the ability to fight the war and how much money and how much effort's put into it. It goes down, and then like in Vietnam, it was a politician's war. And so the war was lost politically, not militarily. We were destroying them militarily, but we had to pull out because we didn't have political support. Same thing is true in the current war that's been going on in Afghanistan. It's been going on for 19 years. We could have taken that place over, established law, maybe martial law, maybe the inhabitants wouldn't have liked it, but we could win if we had the heart to do so. But America is so divided that we don't have the heart to win wars anymore. So last war, in answer to that question, is it was the second Iraq War. Okay, Afghanistan wasn't declared. Let's see. Korea was not declared. That was a police action. They say the Afghan War is the longest war you've been in. That's false. We are still technically at war in Korea. And my dad was in that war in 1950. There's what's called an armistice, where it's a ceasefire. They're not conducting battle, but we are technically, legally still at war. Or at least the Koreans are. That war has never officially ended. And we still have troops out there. That's why it was such a big deal for Donald Trump to go there. First president for a while, long while.
Wait, why are we at war with Korea?
Communism. They invaded South Korea to establish communism
On them and then
in Korea, and then they fought off communism. The Chinese moved in, and my dad was in a major battle. That's a great story. It's probably not needed here, but we were fighting the Chinese communists and the North Korean communists in Korea, and then the armistice took place in 1953. Okay, we were fighting communism in Vietnam. The North Vietnamese came in to the south. There seems to be this north-south thing going on, I don't know. And they were trying to establish communism. They won, we pulled out, okay? So, why were we doing that? Well, because America had the doctrine, the foreign policy of containment of communism. We believe communism was trying to globalize everywhere to make everybody communist, right? And so we believe that if we could contain them where they were, that communism would die
Wouldn't
by its
spread,
own weight, okay? And I think by and large we were correct, but we got into those wars, and of course in America there's a lot of communist propaganda still going on, okay? And so you can imagine why some of these people don't want the war fought, because some of them, like Jane Fonda, were on the side of the communists. Okay, if you know who Hanoi Jane is, you should look her up. She's a famous actress who took the side of the North Vietnamese. She's actually quite political right now again. All right, well, those are a lot of the powers, okay? And you can see it's a very important role. If you are part of Congress, you have say in the way the country does things. Now, of course, in the House of Representatives, your voice is dispelled amongst the many, right? In the Senate, you're one of 100. So being the president, you seem to have a lot more say. You seem to, but keep in mind, the president is not a king. The president is not a monarch, although there are presidential powers, and we will talk about that when we get to the presidency, there are things he can do that he doesn't need Congress's permission for. However, he does need money to do, and Congress can stop the president from doing that, okay? Because they have the power of the purse. So let's talk about some of these issues. Given that Congress has all these powers, you go, well, how should these powers be used, right? You have domestic issues and you have foreign issues. You have philosophical principled issues too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna be voting, like when you vote this cycle, if you do, it's not just the presidency that's important, okay? Because imagine the Senate gets turned over to the Democrats and the House gets turned over to the Democrats, right? That means, more Democrats are voted in than there's a majority in each, chamber. And let's pretend Donald Trump wins. Well, Donald Trump is really not gonna have a whole lot of success and get anything done, okay? But imagine now, Donald Trump wins, or loses. Let's go, keep going on that route. Let's say the Democrats sweep it all, and they have a majority in the House, they have a majority in the Senate, and then they have the presidency. Well, now they get to get their legislation through. Not only will it be voted on and they'll pass it through the two chambers, then it gets to the president's desk, and what does he do? He signs it. So what a great world, right? Because things, well, not necessarily, it just depends on what side of the aisle you're on, right? And in some cases, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it, right? And we got to watch out for that, because we're the victims of our own choices also. So let's talk about some of these issues. What are some of the issues on the platforms? Now, I want you to ask yourself, write these down as I say them, and I want you to put where you are. You're gonna make a column, like 2 columns, a left and a right column. Now the left and the right column they're not necessarily, you just make one side left and one side right and check on one side if you're on that view or not. And then later on we can look at the checks and see which side you're on. I didn't put them on, I'm not telling you what side they are yet, okay? I just want you to answer, okay? Let's take some of the, this is the way I did it. Look, I've got all these issues written here, and then I've got side 1 and side 2, then I got a few more issues here, and then side 1 and side 2. Do you see that? It should be on the, Well, anyway, so let's talk a little bit this. We got 15 minutes left. Let's talk about abortion. We're not going to talk about it too much, but do you believe it should be legal? Do you believe it should be illegal? But it's a little more nuanced than that. What about, do you believe it should be legal in all 50 states by federal law? Or do you believe it should be left up to the states to decide? See, there's an even different view on that, right? It's not all or nothing. Do you believe abortion should be up all the way up to the day of birth? That you could be like, oh my God, I'm going into labor. Oh no, hey, there's Planned Parenthood, let's go there, right? Do you believe you could do that? Some do. Some people believe upwards to 3 months, 3 years even. Peter Singer believes that you should be able to abort your baby after it's born. That's called infanticide. I know it's extreme. But what today is extreme will be tomorrow's norm, okay? Just keep that in mind. All right, so let's just say if you are for legalized abortion, let's put you on the right check. If you are against it, put you on the left check, okay? Second Amendment. What is the Second Amendment? The Second Amendment has the right to bear arms, to keep and bear arms, okay? Comes from the right to life. And if you have a right to life, you also should have a right to defend your life. And if you have a right to defend your life, you should have a right to the means to defend your life. Now, of course there are degrees. Should we be able to own our own nuclear weapon? You say no. So you're against the Second Amendment.
Nuclear?
And I'm joking, I know I'm joking. But what about a tank? Come on, at least give me a tank. Artillery. I should be able to lob high explosives 10 miles down range and land it on my neighbor's house. Well, at least my neighbor 10 miles down the road. Yes or no?
No.
No?
No.
No. Okay. How about at least a machine gun?
That's a little excessive.
Getting closer? Getting closer?
Oh,
Why should we have the right to keep and bear arms? Defend ourselves? From whom?
Someone who wants to hurt us.
Who's gonna hurt you?
Alright.
What if it's the government that wants to hurt you? And the government's gonna come at you with what? Tanks and artillery and airplanes. See, part of the Second Amendment was not just a defense against the people around you. It was to ward off tyranny, that a government will be kept in check if its citizens stand there saying, if you're going to violate our human rights, we're gonna defend them ourselves. Imagine if the Jews had guns. Would they have been able to defend themselves against the Nazis?
Yes.
But they did not, did they?
No.
And so it's a defense against tyranny. So you ask the question, where do you draw the line? Let's just say, if you believe that, they call them assault style weapons, but they're semi-automatic long rifles, we'll call them AR-15s. Let's say if you believe they should be outlawed, or guns should be outlawed in general, then let's put you a check on the right. Okay, but if you believe minimally that AR-15s should be, which are not machine guns, okay? They are not. They look like people believe they're machine guns, but they're not. Okay, they're semi-automatic, which means they fire as many times you pull the trigger. Put that on the right. If you say, no, I believe that you should be able to have those at least. No grenades, no flamethrowers, but at least that, then you put a check on the left. How's that? Because I'm giving you the hotbed debate right now in that discussion. Trust me, there are people who are saying you should not own guns at all. And then there are some people who are like, no, we should all have tanks, okay? That really work, not just dry. What about religious liberty? Do you believe that there should be no religious element in public or political issues? What degree? If you're against it, if you believe religion should be kept from the public square in its entirety, okay? And that may be for a good reason. You may think that that's the best way to protect religion, okay? But you may also believe that prayer in school is actually a good thing, okay? Do you think that you should be able to opt out of the Affordable Care Act because of your stance, your religious stance on abortion? Do you believe that you should be able to opt out of a wedding that is baking a cake for a gay wedding due to your religious views? If you say no, check left. If you say yeah, check. Oh wait, check right. So if you're for abortion, check right. If you're for getting rid of guns, check right. If you're for limiting religious liberty in that regard, the way I put it, they caricaturized it, check right. Catch that, see that where that's going. Check left if you're for the other things. Now I've basically given you very thin discussions about these. Unfortunately, we need to be able to talk about, how do you make decisions based on this? What about same-sex marriage? Do you think the government should endorse same-sex unions as real marriages, and that where you would be obligated to recognize them legally? You say yes, or you're like, no, whatever. Well, if so, check right. If not, if you think that that would be a violation of religious liberty or something, check left. If you think, or if you just think, no, that's ridiculous, men, for whatever reason, you don't have to yet. I haven't given you the reasons or wheres and hows to discuss these things yet. I'm gonna give you one last one, and then I think we're gonna continue this when we come back on Thursday, but socialism versus capitalism. This is a discussion of the economy. Where's our economy going? What kind of economy do you think America should have? Do you think America should have a command economy where the government is in charge of all the commanding heights there, where private enterprise is governed not by private citizens, but by the government? Or that at least that the government so highly regulates the private field that it gets rid of what we would call the rich, that we would tax the rich, that is the billionaires, out of existence, and we would limit how much money people could have. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez suggested that people shouldn't actually have more than $10 million. That is plenty of money, and if anybody has any more than $10 million, that is way too excessive. Is that true? Do you think there should be a limit on how much money people make or possess? Or do you believe that the government should get their hands out of business, and that you should be able to make money as best you can, and that is the best for everybody? Do you believe that the best for everybody is that the government get involved, or do you believe the best for everybody is that the government get out of the way and just let us make our own money?
The best for everybody.
What's that?
The best for everybody.
Well, I mean, again, if you limit how much money people can make, right? That doesn't help the poor, does it?
No, you're not like
So
distributing.
all it does is hurt the rich. Okay. If you get rid of regulations, it allows more people. This is the argument. Okay. There's a counter argument, which I could counter that argument too. Okay. But here's the argument. It's something like, if you get rid of the regulations, it gets rid of the things that get in the way of people starting their own business and finding their own success. Now, there are people who will never succeed, no matter what you do for them. In fact, psychologist Jordan Peterson says that there are 10% of the population walking around that really there's no real place for them, because they're just not, and it's not an insult to say this, it's just they're not smart enough to really make it on their own. And what do you do with that? See, the problem is, conservatives will say, well, you just work hard enough and anybody can make it. Well, apparently that's not true for some people. And it's not true. But then the liberals will say, that, we can help these people, but we can't. You can't make them work, and you cannot make them smarter, because it's a cognitive, it's like saying, you can only make me so strong, right? I'm not gonna get that much stronger. I'm not gonna be the world's strongest man, okay? That's, those types of people are rare, okay? I'm not gonna be Bill Gates, with my creative, inventing intellect, okay? I'm a fairly smart guy, but I'm not gonna be that, okay? I am what I am, and that's all that I am, okay? Popeye impersonator, and a bad one at that. So you go, well, what do you do with the people who aren't gonna make it no matter what? Do you tear down those who are gonna make it no matter what? Because of those? And that's not and remember, that's not an insult on these 10%, okay? Some of these people not only have cognitive problems, they have emotional problems, they may have physical problems, and they may have psychological problems. These are disabilities. So these aren't like, oh, and by the way, and some of them have moral failures at that they truly are lazy, they're jerks, they're just riding and gaming the system. We can lump them in there too, but it's a big stew of types of people that just, no matter what the government does, or no matter how much freedom we give them, they're really just in trouble. And some people need help, and some don't. And the real question is, does a free market economy do them better, or does a command economy where the government takes care of everybody, does that do them better?
We're mixed.
Mixed. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're getting a mixed bag no matter which way you go, right? So you'd ask the question, if you're more on the right side, and the right column is not the right side. Don't think I put it that way. It's quite the opposite. If you believe socialism, the government getting involved with all this, is the right or correct thing to do, then check off on the right. If you think, the free market economy is a better route, check to the left. Now, by the way, we live in a mixed economy, so it's a mixture, it's a ratio. Okay, so, but right now in our election, a lot of people are afraid we're gonna go towards full-blown Marxism and socialism. And I believe that there are real politicians out there that really, really do want that, okay? And that's a real fear. Whether it's a reality that will come to pass in this election cycle, that's to be determined, okay? All right, we're gonna finish up all this stuff next on Thursday, okay?